Hello everyone. So today we are going to talk about the files inside SRC folder, and we will also see. So probably we'll start with our first app. I mean, we have already created it, but we will run it and we'll see how to work with component and how to work with data binding. So that's what we are going to do today. In case you are actually connecting for the first time, let me show you where you can find the code base and where you can find the previous recording. We completed TypeScript so far, so you can go to my YouTube channel, which is named as Tech Talks with Santosh. Actually, I don't want you to create a new channel just because these are all live recordings. So I am uploading the same on my previous YouTube channel, and you will be able to find a playlist called Angular Getting Started. And we have 3 videos as of now. Almost 3 videos. They contain TypeScript, and this actually covers a little bit of getting started with CLI and creating your first application. And as I said, we will be using Angular 12. So I am using Angular 12 RC, which is released. RC is for release candidate. And for code base, you can actually go to my GitHub repository, which is github.com/santosh-yadav-dev, and you can go to repositories and you will be able to find Angular Getting Started here, and the code base is available here, even including the TypeScript one, which we have discussed, as well as the entire course content. It is also available here. So you can see we are done with this. We are also done with TypeScript basics, and now we are on this part where we discuss about installing Angular CLI. We created a new workspace with default app, and we also discuss about how you can create an empty workspace using CLI. And we are on this point right now, workspace walkthrough. And once we are done, we will talk a little bit about monorepos, and then we will talk about we will not talk about monorepos as of now, because it's something which we will talk about later. And then we will talk about template syntax, which is supposed to be today. And there are a lot of things which will be covered over the period of time. Angular libraries, this is also done. So in case you are interested to know how to create your Angular library and how to publish it, and even how to do it, how to create Angular libraries and publish it using NX, you can actually go to my channel, and then you will be able to find these 2 videos, which is Angular building and publishing Angular libraries, and Angular libraries adding secondary entry points, which is a little bit of advanced in case you want to create reshakable library. So you can refer these 2 videos. And Angular CLI PWA, I had some requests for actually including NGRX and state management. So yes, so good news is yes, I am going to do that. So but I am going to include 2 different state managements, because I really love both of them. So NGRX will be there, as well as the new RX Angular. I don't think so. It's not it's new anymore, but yeah, it's been there for quite a period of time, and Michael Hadaki is doing a great job here, and I really love the way they are actually handling few things, especially the RX template part. So good news, I'm going to include RX Angular as well, which will be live streamed in future once we know the basics, and then we need state management in our application. So that's just a little bit info about what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and talk about Workspace. Here, let's go back to our code base. So last time we discussed about all the files which are available here, and we also discussed about that linting is removed from Angular 12. And if you remember, if you joined last time, I mentioned that okay, this lint should not be here. The good thing is, of course, the erase the PR, and then now this is removed. So once you Angular 12 stable version will be released, so you will not find nglint command anymore inside scripts, because it was confusing, right? There is no default linter, but the command was there. Apart from that, you will also not find E2E. So you can see you don't have any E2E project, which we used to get till Angular 11. and it was using protector by default, so there is no ng-e2e command as well as the e2e folder. So in case you are referring to an Angular 11 project and you come back to Angular 12 project, so don't be confused. Linting and e2e is removed from the CLI itself. We will see how we can actually create a new application including linting as well as e2e while actually talking about NX, which will be included as well. So now let's go move ahead. So last time I think we did till browser list RC file, and now we are going to talk about test.rc folder. This is where actually Angular developers are going to have all the fun, because you will be writing code here, right? So the first file which you have is test.ts, and it is self-explanatory. It says okay, file is required by karma conf.js. So it's only for karma. So it is used to actually recursively serve the files to your task runner. So it can actually go ahead and run all the unit test cases. Then you have style.scss. Of course, I am using Sass. Good again. So we'll talk about this later. There's another good feature which is which is going to be launched in Angular 12. I think it should be in RC as well. But so style.scss. Just a second. So this is your global style sheet where you can actually go ahead and write all the stylings. Polyfills. So right now, as Angular 11, Angular 12 makes IE. So IE has been marked as deprecated, and it is optional. So if you want, you can still go ahead and include IE11, but there is an RFC. I'm not sure if you have seen those, but in case your organization is already using Angular and they care about IE11 still, so I will go ahead and suggest go ahead and read the RFC. It's Angular should be here. So not pull request issues, and this is the one I think. So there is already an RFC, Internet Explorer 11 support deprecated. So you can go ahead and read this deprecation, and if you have any inputs to give, you can go ahead and do that, because there is, of course, team actually did enough research before actually marking it as deprecated. So you can see this is where IE is it's like 0.73% of the users are still using IE11, but as you know, right, so IE11 will be, of course, not supported by Microsoft itself, August 2021. I think that's the end date, should be here, yeah, August 17. So it was deprecated on August 17, 2020, and then August 17, 2021 will be removed. So it's like few months from here. So go ahead and see this RFC if it makes sense for you, and in case you need some help from the team, just go ahead and tell them that okay, we need some kind of support, or basically we shouldn't. I mean, anyways, IE11 is dead, so you should not care about it, but still, in case your business is actually relies on this, then feel free to actually go ahead and comment. So right now, the only thing which we include inside polyfills is zone.js, but let me tell you why polyfills are there, right? So there are features, remember, so browsers are actually adding features into different browsers. For example, Chrome is adding some features, your Firefox is adding some features, but not all features are supported on all the browsers sometime, right? So it takes some time for development. So what you can do using polyfills are actually go ahead and support this feature on some backward browser or some other browser which still does not support this particular feature. For example, when lazy loading of images was actually launched by Chrome, it was still not supported by Firefox. So there were a few polyfills which were available, which we can include, and it will be supported on Firefox as well. So kind of that, right? So right now we need zone.js by default. I think this is zone.js is included in all the previous version of Angular. So, but there is good news. There is a plan to actually drop zone.js support in future. This is already something which is mentioned inside Angular.io. So you can go to Angular.io and you can see Angular conceptual references, release information, roadmap. So you can go to roadmap and you can see what are the things which is in queue for Angular team to do. So you will find, okay, there should be zone. So this is the one, right? So leverage full framework capabilities with zone.js opt-out. So this will be available in future. Not sure which version, but yes, zone.js will be optional in future. And this is where frameworks like RX Angular really shines, because the RX Angular allows you to actually work without zone.js as well. And also dropping I11 support will allow the team to actually go ahead and add more features, so they don't have to care about the backward compatibility for older browser, as well as reduce the code which we have right now. So that's a good thing in case we get some in Angular 13. So Angular 12 is deprecated, and Angular 13 the plan is to remove in Angular 13. And let's move on. Main.ts. So this is your entry point to your Angular application. This is where actually you bootstrap your default module. We'll discuss about what module is, but remember right now this main.ts is your entry point to your application, and there are mappings. So far, whatever files we have seen, there are mappings of these files inside angular.json. Remember, I said angular.json is something which is your Angular configuration file. So let's see how they are mapped, right? So these files are actually mapped inside this project section. You will find, okay, which project is this? Econ. And then you will be able to find inside this build option, you will be able to find, okay, this is your polyfills, this is your tsconfig, which is right now this one, right? So tsconfig.app.json, which stays in root. And then you have in main, which is main.ts, and style is here, styles src/style.scss. Similarly, next is index.html. This is your the index.html, right? So this is your root view which will be loaded, or root page which will be loaded once you start your application. And of course, this doesn't have to be actually, you can name it whatever you want, but this is a standard which we follow. So you can see this is index src index.html, and this is output path. Actually, this is where you are, once you run your build, this is where your files, distributable files, will be created. You can of course go ahead and change it in case you want to create it at another part, but by default it is distributable, and your app name or library name. So this one, I think this is also something new, inline style language, because now Angular supports inline style, inline SCSS as well, which was not supported till Angular 11. In Angular 12, actually you can go ahead and write inline SCSS and it will be compiled, but let's talk about it later on once we move on to that feature. So we have favicon.icon, so I'm sure you know what this ICO file is. So this is this one. So you can see there is an Angular logo. So for example, GitHub, so GitHub has this Octocat logo. So these are icon files which is available, so you can add whatever you like. So for example, on my own portfolios, looks like I made, oh no. Okay, so I was making some changes to my DNS, and looks like it broke something. DNS address could not be found. Okay, so this my portfolio contains my photo, so at least I checked my portfolio. Okay, so this I see is done. Then things environments, right? So environments is really important to understand, because remember, in case you create an application, at some point of time you are going to deploy it on different environments, right? For example, generally we do dev deployment, we do prod deployment, we also have sometimes your UAT or testing environment. So what you can do is, based on different environments, you may want to actually hit different API endpoints. That's possible, right? Because when we test the entire thing, including your front end and back end, into a particular environment, right? I cannot go ahead and test my dev or local in with production APIs, which will be totally wrong. Same with dev, right? I cannot just go ahead and hit the staging APIs. So it's like if I'm doing a staging deployment, I will just go ahead and hit the staging APIs. So you can create multiple environment files. This will be something which we'll discuss about when we do the deployment, right? So when we do the production builds or we create builds. So this is you can create multiple, and this also has mapping. So let me show you where they are mapped. So you can go to angular.json and you can see configurations. In configurations, you will find file replacements, and here you can see once you do production build, actually your environment.ts file is replaced with environment.prod.ts file. So make sure whenever you are adding some environment file, it contains the same key. If you miss a single key and if that key is being used somewhere, of course your deployment, your build will fail. Your build will fail because of course Angular has typing information, right? So it uses TypeScript, and if it tries to access that particular property during your build, it will fail. So that's a good thing that it fails way before actually you deploy it. And I think this remains common for everyone, development. So build, optimizer, vendor chunk, source map. Okay, this is only for development because we don't need source map in your production. So name chunks, okay, these are all development settings, but they don't, I mean in production you will find, okay, optimization will be true, vendor chunk will be false, extract license will be true, source map will be false, and name change will be false. I think this is changed only for development. And good thing about Angular 12 is prod mode is by default. So you see that, okay, I thought it's okay, I think it's prod is by default if I'm not wrong. Assets is where you can keep your assets. Just to make sure you don't keep your physical assets here, right? So because it's exposed to public. So just kidding. You can actually go ahead and put your assets like your static files, your images, your videos in assets folder. And at the end, app. So this is where we are going to write our code. So far, whatever files we have seen, you may have to make some changes. Hardly you have to make some changes, but app is where we are going to have fun. This is where we are going to write our code. And let's go ahead and see what are the different files which are available here. So you have one module.ts file, and then there are few component.ts, component.spec, component.scss, component.html, and then at the end there is an app routing module. So this app routing module is actually optional. If you remember, while creating the application, there was a question: do you want to create routing module? And we said yes, and that's why this got created. And if you say no, this will not be created. So the idea behind having a separate app routing module is where you can add all your routing configuration. Don't worry about if you don't know what routing is, but this is where you can actually go ahead and add multiple routes or multiple URLs to your application. So let's go ahead and see the different files which we have. So first is of course this app.module.ts, and let's see what this code contains. So it has a class and module, and this is what? So remember we discussed something about decorators in TypeScript, right? So if I remove this, it's a decorator. So it's actually @ and then some and then it has some metadata as well. So you can see here. So it has some properties inside it, but this is the decorator which is available. And why this decorator is available, let's go ahead and discuss that as well. So if I go ahead and see an Angular module, so this is an Angular module, and you can go ahead and create multiple Angular modules. So it's not that you can have only one Angular module. It's by default you will get one, which is the root Angular module. So modules are generally used to wrap different parts of your features or different parts of your application. So this is really good or really relatable to the developers who have worked on probably Java or .NET. In Java or .NET, remember you have something called namespaces, and you actually club everything, all the features using some namespaces. This is where actually your modules really helps. So what you can do is all the features related to your application, you can wrap them into a single bundle. Like, of course, that's something which we'll talk about in future, but you can wrap everything and keep at a single place using your Angular module. So for example, if I create a new feature tomorrow called probably, let's say, products, so what I can do is I can create an Angular module called products and keep everything related to products into that particular module. And if I want to use it somewhere, I can just tell, okay, go ahead and use it from Angular product module, rather than actually keeping it somewhere common. I know because this particular thing or particular feature belongs to product module. So that's for future, but let's talk about what we have here. So we have a class which has a decorator called @ng module. So all these decorators, right? So you will find multiple decorators being used as we move ahead. So right now this is the first decorator which we came across, which is known as @ng module, and this contains some metadata. First, let's discuss about why decorators. So these decorators are actually used by the Angular compiler to identify what kind of file is this and what. So because modules will be actually compiled in a different way, your components will be compiled in a different way. In case you have services, it will be compiled in a different way. So this metadata, so this is not metadata, but this decorators actually tell the compiler, okay, this particular class is actually an Angular module. So okay, do something with this in case we move ahead, we'll see some more, but this is what this decorator is going to do. And then it has some metadata, or you can say some information about what this class also holds. So here every Angular module which we create will have all these properties and even more. So right now we have declarations. So declarations, you can see this is an array. So it means you can add multiple values here, but what kind of values? So right now just remember, in declarations array you can add component, you can add pipes, you can add decorators, and because the reason being they have to be registered. So Angular compiler should know, okay, this particular component, if I'm going to use it, it is already registered with some Angular modules. That's a requirement as of now, but again, I'll just let you know that there is a feature request optional ng module. So this is something which will be a reality in future, where you can actually avoid creating Angular modules. So rather than actually providing this metadata to Angular modules, you can actually create a component and it holds all the metadata. But that's for future. Right now, don't worry about it until that gets released. So declarations, where we will register your component, we will register your directives, you will register your pipes, and then next property which we have is imports. In imports, we generally register the modules, the different Angular modules. So okay, so Adil has some question. Is it mandatory file in every Angular project? You mean Angular module? If you are referring to Angular module, yes, it's a mandatory file right now. In case you want to, at least, so right now the Angular module is something which there should be at least one Angular module which should exist, which is actually commonly treated as a root module. And why this is required? So it's a simple reason, because main.ts requires an app module to be bootstrapped. So this is where it is used. So that's why it is mandatory as of now. But in future, as we make ng module optional, you can actually bootstrap and component itself. Hope it's clear, Adil. So let's move on. So imports has few properties. So you can see there are few modules which are already registered. In imports, you will generally register a module. It can be your a module created by you. It can be a module coming from a third-party library. It can be a module coming from Angular itself. So let me just do one thing before I make changes to this. Let me switch the branch. let's create a new branch. This is Angular okay, so we just drop this one. Last time I actually forgot to create a new branch. How to count all rows with 100k data fast? Sorry, I've never used in MySQL, but I mean in SQL we have count of one. Generally, that's what is suggested in case you just need the count. So I'm not sure about MySQL. Okay, so now we discussed about imports. Move on to providers. So providers, you can see this is something which has an empty value. So it means it's optional by default. You don't have to go ahead and register something here. So providers are generally used for your services, but there is a way. I mean, this particular property is useful, but now with Angular 6 and above, the services you can actually register in a different way. We'll see that, but just to let you know, this is something where you can register your services. And then you have a bootstrap, and you pass a component. Remember, you can always pass multiple components, but suggested is actually to have a single component. And this component, whatever you mention, the bootstrap component, this component is actually something which is used here on index.html app root. So once you start your application, this will be the first component which will be loaded. So this generally, this app module is something which we call it as by default root module, and this app component.ts is something which is called as root module by default. So remember, so at least you need one root module and you need a root component to be available on your application right now to make it work. So we by default Angular CLI gives you both, but as it's already given by default to you, you should understand why it is needed, right? Rather than actually just going to use it. So this is the reason. So you need a default root module and you create a default root component to start your application, and that's why they are registered here. So let's go ahead and talk about okay, you are still getting some noise. Just a second, let me just check. Is it okay now? I think check my mic as well, but should be fine, I think. And is there anything else? Hello. Okay, I think it should be fine now because I just enabled the noise cancellation again. Now, okay, got it. I mean, the different mic was selected. Sorry, it was my, and that's why I'm wondering why my actually voice is really low. It was a different mic altogether. Great. So let's go ahead and now talk about the default component, right? So we spoke about default module. Now let's go ahead and see default component which we have. So by default, whenever you create a new component, we are going to see how to create a new component. But remember this. So whenever you create a new component, you will always get 4 files based on your settings. So this is something which you can go ahead and control. But by default, in case you don't make any changes to your settings, you will get 4 files. One is your that's great to have. So you will get 4 files. One is component.ts. So this is TS file as we saw while doing the TypeScript thing. So you have this TS file where you can go ahead and write your TypeScript code. You have spec.ts where you can write your test cases for sure. And then you have SCSS where you can actually write your styling, and then you have HTML where you can write your template. Good thing about Angular is Angular Template Engine is it's just HTML, right? So you don't have to learn about some other syntax, for example, JSX or .wu or something else. And then routing module is something which you have, of course, as I said, right? So you can add some route information, but not something which we have to see now. We can do that later. So let's move on to the app component.ts and see what this contains. So in Angular, if you talk about an component, so let's see what a component is here. Component is here. So you have components are nothing but again a class which has some decorator known as @component, and then they have some metadata. So if you see this metadata, what metadata they contain? So they have selector, template URL, style URL. Now let's talk more about what component in reality is. So if I have to actually go ahead and tell you what components are, for example, on this page, so let's say you can say a side nav, right? So the side nav can be one component. This header can be another component. This footer can be one component. This again, this side pan can be another component. This content section can be another component. So if I have to relate it to the real-time application or real world, right? So what components are? They are actually some reusable HTML tag which you are writing. So that's like custom HTML tag which you are writing by yourself. And if you use that custom HTML tag somewhere, they will render some data. Now that data can be anything, right? So it can be something which is coming from your backend. It's something can be static on your HTML. So it's up to you what, or it can come with something which can come from your JSON files. Depends, right? So there can be multiple sources. Hey Krishna. So here, if I see if I have to figure out where that custom HTML tag is, this selector property is that HTML tag. So you have this selector property as of now called app-root. So if I place this app-root somewhere, it will render something which is available inside this template URL. This template URL is this HTML. It contains some HTML data right now. It's default HTML, and then this will be the styles which will be applied on this HTML. Right, so I hope you understood. But let's go back to the selectors. Whenever you create an application, and what in case you are referring or working on Angular application, and you see selectors like this, selector app hyphen. So remember, you don't have to actually make it app hyphen whatever name is. So Angular says that you should always go ahead and prefix your selectors. Don't use root. Don't use root. But you don't have to either use app as well. So this selector is something which you can change again by using the JSON file which we have here, and you can go to prefix, and you can change this prefix to whatever you like. So for example, I can say, okay, I want to use prefix as ecom for all the new components directives which I have, and it will be using this prefix. But make sure you can also do yeah, let me just tell you. So once you do ng new, and then you can give your app name, whatever name you want. You can pass the prefix here as well. So you can say -FN prefix. Uh, Prefix is equals to whatever prefix you want to give. So it will save you some efforts that you have to go ahead and change the prefix after creating the application. Rather than that, while creating a new application, make sure if you have already finalized what prefix you are going to use. Generally, a lot of application use prefix based on their own organization name or based on the project. So feel free to use whatever you want to. As we are changing it right now, we have to go ahead and change it manually. So I can just go ahead and say this will be ecom -root, and then I have to change this as on your index.html as well. So I have to change from app to ecom. Okay, so this is template URL. So now let's go ahead and run this application, right? So we can see this entire thing, whatever we have discussed in on your view, of course. Unless you don't see something on your page, don't believe anyone, including me. So, hey Shubham, thanks for following. So here I can just, so now let's see how to serve this application, right? So you can run it using a command called ngserve. Remember what so far we have seen ng new, and now this is the second command which we are going to see, which is ngserve. And you might be wondering that, okay, I'm going to use ngserve and it will use the global version. So there is a catch. So Angular by CLI by default will try to use the local version first. So if I see my local version, it is CLI 12, right? So 12 RC. So you don't have to actually go ahead and run npx again, because it will be using anyways Angular 12 by default. And it says, okay, now it is saying share anonymous users data. I can say yes, because uh, this is something which is available on GitHub itself. But you can decide in case you want to share your own organization data or not. They don't capture anything apart from the commands which you are using, just to improve your developer experience in future. So it's compiling the application now. And okay, so done. So now my application is compiled, and it's 3.30 MB, of course, because it's in dev mode, and it is running on localhost 4200. So let's go ahead and open the application, and let me just close all the other browsers which we don't need. Localhost 4200, and let's see. So this is the default page which is actually generated by Angular CLI itself. And now we can go ahead and change it, but you will find some useful information here. For example, the Twitter handle. So you can go ahead and find the Angular's Twitter handle here. So it was recently verified. And then you can also find YouTube channel of Angular. They have good content, especially in last few months, uh, from Emma, Mark, and Mike. Sorry, Minko. Yeah, they are creating some good content. So go ahead and check them out. So for example, this one, right? So Angular language service with Ivy, optimizing apps with resource inlining. We are going to discuss about it as well. But yeah, in case you want to see, then you can go ahead and refer these videos. I think there was, okay, there are a few videos from Minko as well, but I'm not sure where they are. Yeah. So go ahead and follow the channel. So we can subscribe this to the channel. They have some good content as well. Okay, now coming back to this page, right? So now we have also you have a link to your documentation, CLI documentation, Angular blogs itself, and there are a few commands. So you can see in case you want to create a new command, this is the command. In case you want to create, add Angular material to your application, they have given this command. And apart from that, you have some links. So you have link to your, this is animation, this is Angular CLI, this is protector. Okay. Then this is related to meetups. So in case you want to find out the meetups around you, you can go ahead and do that. This is linked to Discord. So Angular has Discord channel as well, which is official channel for communication. So in case you want to join Discord channel, please go ahead and join. You can see there are 9,000 members already, and it's a pretty active Discord server. So go ahead and check that out. I'm already into the server, so it's just giving me option because it doesn't know that I'm still logged in. But go ahead and join the Discord server as well. And in case you have any questions, there are a lot of experts who are already on the Discord server. There are people from Angular CLI, Angular team itself. So you can, in case you get some issues, you can just directly discuss with them. And yep, so let's go ahead and see how we can modify this template. So right now it's entire HTML which is written here, right? So and I can just go ahead and remove this. So removed all the HTML which we had previously, and let's go ahead and put or write our first program, which is hello world, right? So save this and see this. So once you make any changes and your application and you did ngserve, you don't have to run ngserve again. Remember this, because a lot of developers, when they start, they make some changes and then they try to run ngserve again, which will cause an error. Good thing with Angular 11 and above, you will get this. So let me just do ngserve again, because I'm already running ngserve on the previous terminal. So this is what happens when in case you do ngserve again now. So it will say, it will tell you that okay, port 4200, which is by default, which is the default port used by Angular CLI. So it says, okay, port 4200 is already in use. Do you want to actually use different port? This is really useful in case you want to run two different applications, and also useful in case you are just by mistake you are running the same command again, right? So it tells you, okay, 4200 is already running. It means I am actually running it somewhere else. So I can just do Control C to stop this and move on to the first terminal. And whenever you make some changes, it will be loaded by default. I mean, it will just reload, compile again, and it will reload your application. And you can see it's hello world. So let me do H1 here. So we can see it. Hello world. So right. So we just wrote our first component with hello world and it's available. So what you can do is you can just change your template and everything will be rendered again. There are a few more ways to work with template. Just a second. Yeah, I blocked him. So template URL, right? So right now we have this selector, of course, and then template URL is something where you provide the URL of a template, right? So it's an HTML file and you provide the path. But in case you have small templates, you can actually avoid template URL. Remember, it doesn't matter if you use template URL or template, because at the end, both will be converted into inline HTML. So once you create production build, it will be converted to inline HTML. So it doesn't matter whether you are using template URL or template. So let's see the second option, which is template, where you can provide inline HTML. So here, rather than actually providing a different HTML file, I can just write a template and write the H1 inside this. I mean, write the HTML inside this. So I can say actually, hello world from template, right? And good thing about template is, I think this is something which is launched recently. So in case I make some HTML error, so let's use a different closing tag, and I think this is something supported. Yeah. So let's see this, right? So even you get the errors inside your inline HTML inline template as well. So if you decide to use template property rather than template URL, you are going to still get the help from the Angular language service, where it will tell you, okay, this is something which is wrong. I'll tell you how to enable Angular language service as well, but let's hold on. I have already enabled it by default. I mean, I have already enabled it in past, so I don't have to do it. But you can write the inline template using the template property, and let's go ahead and see. It should be working now. And hello world from template, right? So we did the same thing. But let's move and see what happens when I use multi-line template. Okay, so I have this h1 and then I'm writing from template on a second line. Or let's say I have a div and then I'm writing and sorry, I have a h1 and then I'm writing a div here and I'm getting errors, right? So I have a lot of errors here. How to fix this? So does it mean I cannot use multi-line multi-line HTML with template property? It's of course you can. You have to just use the backtick. So rather than actually single quotes, you have to use backtick, and that's it. And now it will work. You will not get any issues. You can just let's format this, and let's remove this div and hello world, and then I can just move this from template into this particular div. And let's save it. And this is how your output looks like. So in case you have multi-line HTML, go ahead and use backticks. If you want to use just template URL, no problem, go ahead and use template URL. So whatever way you prefer, I generally few developers try to actually avoid creating a separate HTML file, right? So if I remove HTML file, you end up with less number of files. So that's why some developers prefer it, especially in case you have a single line of HTML. So feel free to choose whatever you want to. Same with styles. So right now we have a style URLs where I can give the path of the style as CSS file. You also have another property called styles, and you can write your HTML here as well. So we will probably, let's see some example. I'm not sure what the syntax is, but let's see, because I generally don't use it. Probably it should be something like, let's see which tag we have. I can say div. No, this is not the one. Mhm. What it says, it should be string. So I think this is something like this, h1, and then and I can probably provide background background color, which is, let's say, red. I'm correct. Let's refer to the documentation because I generally don't use inline one, but I think I'm right. Angular.io and styles. Oh, this is not the one. Style properties. ng generate, create a new project. Component. Oh, this is the one, styles. So it's string, array of string. Okay. Let's see some styles. Color blue. Okay. Okay, let's try to save this. Probably see what happens here. Okay, failed to compile because there is some error. Okay, so it says h1 semicolon background color expected identifier. Let's see. Okay, this worked, but should be what, hash h1. Okay, probably this is the syntax, just to let you know. I mean, I'm not used to actually write the inline styles, but you can actually provide styles, inline style as well, rather than actually writing everything into a separate SCSS file. Okay, so these are two properties which I think you should be aware of as of now. So let's move on and comment this out. Control K C and uncomment this one. Template URL, right? So we now let's go ahead and do one thing. Let's go ahead and create a new component of our own, and we can discuss about the rest of the things. So we did Workspace walkthrough, so you know about, and now we also done with component introduction. So now you know that what components are. So it's a reusable HTML tag which you can use anywhere you want to, and they will render something. So whenever you use it, they will render something. So now it's time to actually create your first component. So let's go ahead and see that. Let's go ahead and create a new component of our own. So I'll just stop the server now. You can actually go ahead, keep it running, not a problem, but let's stop it right now and let's move on to our next command, or let's learn about our next command, which is to create a new component. So how to create a new component? You can just do ng g. This g is for generate, so I can also write generate. So let's use shortcut as of now, ng generate, and then you have component, which is also short called C. And then you can give the name of your component. So I'll say, okay, this component name is, let's say, product. And whenever you create a new component, it will create a new folder and put all the files inside that particular folder. That's the default behavior. If you want to change it, you can also pass something like flat equals to true. And let's do dry run. Okay, so you can see, of course, as I am using dry run, it will not create the files, but we can see where these files will be created. So it will be created inside app folder directly. So previously, if you see, without this flat flag, it was created inside a folder, and with flat flag, it will be created on the root itself, or it will be created in whatever folder you are right now. Generally, your files are created based on the relative path. So if I am, let's say, inside product, right? So, and I say flat equals to true, all the files will be created inside product. If I say, if let's say new component product list, so a new folder called product list will be created, and inside product folder, and then all the files will be there. So keep this in mind. It's really useful, this flat equals to true, in case you want to keep all the components together, or you want to create a new empty folder and then you want to create something. So up to you, whatever way you prefer. So let's go ahead and see the product folder. So you have product, as I said, always 4 files will be created. So you have component.ts, you have spec file, you have SAS file, and you have HTML. So right now HTML is empty, and it just contains, not empty, but it says product works. This is just to actually let you know that whenever you place this component somewhere, at least something will be rendered, right? And of course, we have to change this. So let's go ahead and see the product component.ts. And if you compare this product component app component.ts with product component.ts, you will find this ng on init is something extra. And you also have constructor. So constructor is something which we are aware, but what this ng on init is, let's comment this as of now. Don't worry about what this ng on init is. We will discuss about it soon, because this is something which is called as life cycles. So component lifecycle looks, this is what that represents. So let's remove it right now, and we will add it back. So now we have new component as also, if you remember, I said prefix, right? So you can see this prefix is changed to ecom rather than app. And yeah, so we got our new component. Let's see how to use it first. So I can use this selector, so which is my HTML tag, which is my reusable HTML tag, and I can go ahead and put it on my app component.html right now. So let's do clear, and let's run the application again. So I'll say ng-serve, and now I am going to use -open, -open flag. This actually -open flag will actually compile this application and start my application on my default browser. So I don't have to actually go to browser and enter localhost 4200. It will be automatically done by Angular CLI itself. Remember, you have full access. I mean, in case you don't have admin rights, you may not actually see this working. So now you have hello world, and this product works, right? So let me just zoom in. So you have hello world, and this product works, which is actually coming from this ecom product, because this is what we have placed after hello world. So now we know how to render our component, and why we did this on our app component.html, because that's our root component, right? So if you want to render something, it has to be rendered, or it has to be included inside an HTML, or inside a template which is already rendered. So if I have a new component, as product is already rendered and I want it to be rendered within product, I can actually create a new component and add the selector here, and it will be rendered. But let's say if I create a new component and I don't include it anywhere, it will not work. So it has to be included inside some component which is already rendered. So, or let's say if I include it within product, but I don't include the product inside this one, it won't be rendered. This can be achieved using routing, but that's a topic for tomorrow, and it's topic for later on. So let's not worry about that thing. But in case you want to render it right now without using any routing, you have to make sure that it's included on some of the component which is already rendered. So let's see product works. We have this for now, and let's go back and uh, so let's see. So we now know how to create a new component. We have to actually now start learning about the binding syntax. So that's why I created a new component, so we can learn about the different type, the binding syntax which we have, and the directives. So which will be really useful when once you start working on Angular. They will be used widely. So ngif, ngfor, switch is not that much used, but yeah, it's really useful, and you should be aware of it. Class and style. So let's go ahead and start with the binding syntax. But before we learn about binding syntax, important question: why you create front ends? And the answer is we get paid for it, right? Of course, we get paid for it, but the important thing to understand is we create front ends because we want to render some information which is coming from somewhere. It can be your static information, which is, let's say, coming from your JSON files, right? So which is available on your website itself. It can be some dynamic information which is coming from your backend. It can be just a simple HTML, but why you are creating front ends is actually to render some information. So all the frameworks provide you some syntax to actually go ahead and render some information by using different rendering engines. Remember, this is the word, rendering engines, which allows you to write some syntax which can be compiled and rendered as an HTML on your view. So for example, if you go to React has JSX, right? It's a rendering engine. Angular also has this IV, something known as IV, which is the view engine, which is the engine, or what you can say, rendering engine, which is used right now. So, but IV is more. I think IV is more than just a rendering engine. It has a lot of things, and it is the third generation engine. So, Angular had something called view engine for a longer period of time till Angular 9. From Angular 4 to Angular 9, it was view engine. With Angular 9, something known as IV came into picture. So let's go ahead and see how to bind the data. So here, first syntax which you have to learn about is interpolation. And to do that, let's right now create some property here in our component.ts, right? Because if you see, component.ts is where we are going to connect our backend, and we are going to send some data to our front end. So let's see how it is possible. So right now, as we don't have any backend, we will of course see some integration with some APIs later on. But as we don't have anything right now, we will just create some properties with some values. So here, let's say I create a property called title, and I assign a default value to this. And let's say this is named as product information. So this is the title, and now what I want to do is I want to display this title on my HTML. Let's go back to our HTML. Let's remove this, and as I am saying this is a title, I am going to use h1 tag, and I want to use this property called title here. I can use this double curly brackets and use title here. So this is a valid syntax for all the primitive data types. For example, you have string, you have number, you have date, or it can be used for Boolean as well. So you can just put double curly brackets and provide your variable name here. And once you do this, let's go back to our view. So you have this product information available here. So this is what your interpolation syntax is. You can change this interpolation, but this what do you call it? I mean, this characters, right? So this right now we use double curly brackets for our interpolation, but this can be changed as well. I will not suggest anyone to change it, but there is a property called interpolation. You can actually provide something else. So let's see. I think it contains yeah, string. So I can do something like this. So I can say string comma. So rather than double curly brackets, let's use single curly brackets. So let's save this, and we got some error because in our HTML we have this double curly bracket. So let's remove double curly bracket, save this, and let's serve the application again. So in this -f open. But don't use it. I mean, use the default one because, of course, you can change for your convenience, but you will be actually causing a lot of confusion to the next 100 developers who are going to use this. So let's see. Contains unusable interpolation symbol. That's range. So overrides the default interpolation start and end and delimiters. Probably this is not something which can be used. So let's try with this one. So rather than actually curly brackets, let's try this one because it says double. This one is not usable. Contains this is not usable syntax. So let's see. It should be. Probably I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. Invalid ICU message, missing this codes. And now it worked. So probably I have to refresh this page. So you can see I changed the default double curly brackets to box syntax. So just a second, I'll be back. Hello. Huh? Okay, so this is the way to actually just use different interpolation syntax in case you want to. So let's comment this out and move back to our original. Great. So now we know about the interpolation syntax, and now let's move on to the next way. So we have something known as property binding and event binding, and this is something which is really useful, and you are going to use it at a lot of other places because if you understand this property binding and event binding, you will be able to actually understand this component communication really well using input and output. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we can do to bind the data. So of course we have this interpolation syntax available, but you can also use the property binding syntax which is available in Angular to achieve this data binding. So let's see what kind of property we are talking about. Angular allows you to use any valid property of any valid HTML tag. Remember, I'm repeating valid because it's really important. So any valid property of any valid HTML tag can be used to bind some data directly. So let's see. I'll be using div because of course we use div a lot. So here, let's say I have to bind some data to div. Let me show you a snippet here, for example. Let's see, I can do something. Let's start a stack blitz. Hmm. Okay. So yeah, right. So little bit of I'll talk a little bit about JavaScript. So here, so this is the same example which I actually needed. So we are in luck. So here, so let's say you have this index.html and this is div which is available. Okay, so on your HTML you have some div and you want to bind some data to its inner HTML or inner text property. So how we generally do it in JavaScript? So we actually create a div, then we access the div by using get element by id or get element by tag, whatever you prefer, and then we use app div dot inner HTML, or you can say also inner text, and then you can pass just text. This is also valid. And this is it. So this is how you do data binding in case you are working on just a JavaScript app, right? So you can use this particular syntax. But what if I tell you you don't have to do this inside Angular to achieve the same functionality, and you can do it without writing any single line of code. You can just do it by actually creating a div and by defining a property. So let's go ahead and see that. So here I'll say div. This is a div, okay? And let's say I'll create a new property called product name is equals to, I'll say, okay, this product name is 1 plus 9, right? So it's a mobile phone, and I think I made a spelling mistake. Product name. I can just go ahead and use here with inner text is equals to this, but I'm getting some error. So let's use the Angular syntax. Angular says in case it's a valid property and you want to bind some data, just wrap it inside box. And let's save this inner text is equals to product name, and let's move on to our application, and you can see your data is actually rendered here by just using the same. I mean, if you see the functionality, it's same, right? I mean, I have app div dot, I'm assigning app inner text to this. Here we are doing the same thing without writing a single line of even JavaScript or TypeScript code. So you can just use any valid property with box syntax is equals to, in case you have variable. And once we talk about component communication, we'll learn about few more things. So here, this is, let me just write it down. So this is interpolation. This is property binding. And now third. So right, let's talk about the third one, which is event binding, and then we'll take a break. So now we know that, okay, whenever you have some property, you can actually do property binding syntax using box syntax, and you can avoid assign a variable name. What in case you want to initiate an event? How to handle that inside Angular? So let's go ahead and do that. So I am going to write a code to toggle a div, to show hide a div. So here I'll be creating a button. So let's see. Let's create a button, and I'll say this is toggle. And I want to do it on click. So in JavaScript, we have events like on click. In Angular, you can just remove this on, put it inside this banana syntax. So this is known as banana syntax, and write the function name here. So let's write a function called toggle, and I'll create a variable called visible, or yeah, let's do visible is equals to false. So by default, it's of course a boolean, and by default the value is false. So here I can say this dot visible is equals to not this dot visible. Right? So I'm writing a toggle functionality. So it's, if it's true, make it false. If it's false, make it true. And then I can just use this property. Let's use on the same div which we have. So there is a property called hidden, which is, I think, common property for most of the HTML tags. It's something which is available for, I think, almost every tag which we have. So I can say hidden is equals to visible. So if it is hidden is false, it will be visible if it is true. And okay, so I have to just call this toggle function here and save this. And let's go ahead and see our application. Let's click on toggle, and you can see you just wrote the toggle functionality without even writing a single line of some logic. There is only one line of logic which is available here, but to hide and show the div, we just had to use the inbuilt property or the valid property of div. So we said hidden is equals to false and sorry, visible, which is the property. And then that's it. So this is how you will achieve event binding. So any events, so most of, so any JavaScript event, just remove the on and use this banana syntax, and you get your Angular's event binding in picture. So this is event binding. Great. So so far so good. We have learned about the components. We have learned about what how to create your first component. We have learned about binding syntax, but we have to learn about this now. I think we should be able to complete these directives today, and then talk about this Angular architecture tomorrow, and start with component lifecycle loops. So let's take a break. Let's take 5 minutes. So it's 7:11 right now in my watch. So I will be back by 7:20, right? So, and we'll continue with the directives, built-in directives. Okay, we are back. Yeah, so Krishna, it will be available here for 14 days, so you can watch it anytime you want, probably before joining tomorrow. So let's move on to our directives part. So we'll be talking about built-in directives in this session. We won't be writing our own directive because that will be a little bit advanced as of now. So let's keep it simple and talk about the built-in directives which we have. And first thing which we will see is ngIf. So let's move on to our application again and see where we can use ngIf. Or let's talk about ngIf first, and then we'll talk about ngIf because we will be, anyways, we'll be able to see some example. So let's talk about ng-for first. So, but before we do that, let's talk about directives. What are directives? So here, hmm, as we are going to talk about built-in directives, but let's talk about what are directives first, and then we'll move into built-in directives part. So we have two types of directives available, which is one is known as structural directive, one is known as attribute-based directive. So structural directives are some directives which can actually modify your DOM once it is rendered, right? So for example, here we have three different structural directive which is available. But remember, so something which can actually modify your DOM is structural directive. Attribute-based directive is something which modifies your attributes. For example, let's say a directive which can add some property or some attribute at runtime, right? So for example, uh, what example I can give? So let's say on hover, you do some add some background color to your element. So that can be one example of attribute-based directive. When actually Angular came in, the older version of Angular, right? So Angular JS, Angular 1, there were three types of directives. So even the component was actually a kind of directive. So if someone who actually comes from Angular JS background, they get a little bit confused because okay, where is my component based directive? So it's not sorry, it's not available anymore. So because component is actually something which is got separated. The only difference here in Angular is your components between your components and directives, right? So they are almost similar. Whatever a component can have, a directive can have, apart from template. So the template URL property which we spoke about, that's something which is not available in a directive. That's the only difference. Otherwise, you can your directive can have everything. I mean, whatever we discuss about next, right? So I can do properly. I can inject a service. I can do input binding. Sorry, not input, but I can have an input parameter, I can have an output parameter, everything, but I cannot have a template. That's the only difference if you see component and directive. But as I said, we are not going to write our own directive as of now, but we discuss, let's use those as of now. So first directive which we are going to use is name known as ng4. So for this example, what we are going to do is, let's write some code and see where actually ng4 comes into picture. So to do this, I'm going to create a new interface. I'll call this as product.ts, and I'll use, this will be an interface. So I'll say export interface, and this will be product. And let's add some properties to this. So I'll say it will have ID, it will have a product name, it will have a manufacturing date to your component, to your product, which will be of course type of date. It will have a price, so which will be again some number, and what else? I think this is more than enough, so let's go ahead and do that. So I have got this product interface. Now let's go ahead and create a new product. Here I'll say products is type of product array equals to, let's create some records, right? So some dummy records. So it's ID, one, name, iPhone X, right? And then you have manufacturing date. So it's a new, not data cube, date, and let's new date 1 January 2021, and then you have price, so let's say 50K, and let's copy this and create our next record, at least 3 records. And let's say 1 plus 8, and I'll say this is 2019 and 40K. And let's create the third one. Let's say now Samsung. I don't remember any model. So Samsung, and let's say this is 1st Jan 2018 price. Okay, so we created a new product now, and let's see how to bind this data. So generally, whenever you have list of records, what we use is we use table, right? But still, how to write this? I mean, how to write it in our template? Let's try to use the interpolation. Okay, so we used interpolation syntax right now, and as we said, it can be used for primitive data types. So you have something known as object, object, object. What is this object, object? But it tells you one thing at least. It says whatever you have, whatever object you have, it has 3 records. So 1, 2, 3, right? So it has 3 records. So we can actually visualize this data as JSON by using this is pipe. This is known as pipe syntax. I generally use it just in case I want to see if there is any data which is coming to my template or not. So this is very useful for debugging. Otherwise, don't use it. I mean, so you can see, okay, it says, okay, this is how your data looks like. I can also use, generally, this is something I do while debugging. So I can use pre-tag, and it converts it to a nice JSON, right? So something like this, so I can see it properly. So it says, okay, whatever data you have, it's array. It has 3 records. These are the properties: ID, name, manufacturing, and price. So okay, so I cannot do it using the interpolation syntax. So what we can do is we can actually use something, take some help from Angular itself. So this is where your ng for comes into the picture. So let's see this now. I mean, just to confirm, I mean, just to check, my voice is visible. Sorry, you can hear my voice, right? Because I had muted my mic. Looks like yes, you should be able to. So let's use a table. Probably, so remember this. So I'm using table, but in your production application, probably you might be using something else based on the requirement. I mean, you can use ULLI, you can actually just use divs, or you can use any third-party table, right? I mean, probably AG grid or NG grid or whichever grid your team decides to use. So let's use table as of now, and let's see. So I have table, and what I can do is I can you have t body, sorry, t head and t body tags. In t head I can have all the headers, and in t body I can just have all the records available. So let's go ahead and do use it. So I'll say first it's str, and then I can have multiple th. So based on our headers, so let's see what headers we have. So we have id name, manufacturing, just write MFT, manufacturing date, and then price. Let's go back to body now. So this is our headers, and in body we'll again create a tr. Now we have three records. We cannot just write three records manually, so this is where I'm going to use ng for. So I can say star ng for is equals to, let's see the syntax now. Remember in TypeScript we had discussed about for off loop. So syntax is pretty similar to that. So I can just do let product of products. And then here I can use td. Now it's up to you whether you want to use property binding or you want to use interpolation, whichever you think is fine, right? So I can just use property binding. So let's say an example of both. So I can say product dot ID. So this is how you can use interpolation. Let's use, and now here I can also use the uh, property binding syntax. So I can just say, okay, this is inner text is equals to product dot name, and then I can just leave it as it is, empty. So prefer in case it is your data is coming as HTML, right? So probably you can use inner HTML here, which requires some changes to your code, but product ID, product manufacturing date, and then last one is your price. Then so let's go ahead and see. So this is your data, which is available inside a table. So remember, in case you have list of values, what you have to use is ng-for. ng-for is a structural directive. The reason being, let's go back and see. So here, let me just zoom in. So you can see this table and this t body and this tr. So remember how many trs we have in our template. So we have a single tr which is available in our template. How many got rendered? We got 3. Right? So this is something which is generated by ng-for us. So which means ng-for is actually able to modify my DOM element. That's why ng-for is one of the your structured directive. And this star, if you see the star, it actually tells you that it is a structural directive, and it is also written with a purpose because it hides a lot of code from the developers, and it is actually written inside whatever ng-for is, right? So if you see the actual syntax of ng-for, it has few more things available inside it, but what gets exposed to us is just star ng-for, and that's what we use. So this is ng-for, and it has few more things. So we will come back to that because ng-for has few more properties which we have to be aware of. But here, let's talk about ngif as well, right? So and then we'll come back to ng-for. So let's see ngif. Here I can create another button. So let's, and this is to show height table, toggle table. I'll call it as toggle table, and here I'll say toggle table. Let's go back to component.ts, and let's implement this toggle table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different property because I don't want to mess up with the existing visible flag, right? So I can say this is hidden is equals to true. So by default it is hidden, and here I can say this dot hidden is equals to not this dot hidden. So now we got our toggle table function implemented and everything. So now I can just go ahead and use on table. I can say let's ng if is equals to hidden. So I'm going to use this property on table. So let's go ahead and see our output. And let's click on toggle table. So your table is right now not visible, but you may say, okay, this is what I was doing with this toggle. I mean, I can just click on toggle and the property gets removed. Sorry, this table, this 1 plus 9 is hidden, and I am doing something similar here. So what is difference between ngIf and hidden? So let's go ahead and see the DOM. This is where actually you'll be able to figure out what's going on. So here, so let's see, let's click on this toggle. So you can see this value is still available. Actually, just it adds a hidden property and that's it. It is actually not modifying your DOM. The element is still available. It has just a hidden property. Let's see this toggle table functionality. Let's see this table, right? So this table is visible right now. It's part of your DOM. Click on toggle table and this entire element is removed. So it means ngIf again can modify your DOM, so it's a structural directive. But the other advantage is in case you have a lot of content on your page. Remember, as a user, I'm not going to see everything. I'm not going to see everything which is available on your view. But more number of DOMs you have, more number the slower your application is. So in case you have like 20, 30K DOMs, it's something which of course your browsers won't be able to support, and you will see some degraded performance. By using ngIf, you can actually avoid this. So let's say if you have some sections, for example, accordions are best to actually show hide some information, right? So because you can just click on accordion, it expands and you can see the elements. So probably you can implement something like accordions in case you have a lot of information to show, or have some places, right? So probably to show hide something, some buttons or some controls by using which you can just minimize the number of DOM elements which you have. So ngIf is very useful in case you have a lot of contents. You want to make sure that you have least number of controls visible. This is where your ngIf can come into picture. We can also use it to actually show different templates, which we will talk about later on, not right now. So that is something which you can also do do using ngIf. So this is ngIf. Let's go back to ngFor. So now we know, okay, this is how we can use ng for. So it's like running a for loop on your entire element, which is coming to your template, and then you can display whatever you want to. But it has few more properties. Let's go ahead and talk about them. So here I can put semicolon, and let's start with two properties, which is even and odd. So ng4 also contains the information about even and odd rows. So I don't have to actually go ahead and let's say the perfect use case for even and odd can be, let's say you have different colors to show. So here I'll say this is this is even row, and next is odd. It gives you basically true and false value. So let's see. This is even, and this is odd. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you have even, of course, odd will be false. So this is how you can get information about if the current row is even or odd. Let's see an example, right? So this is where we can actually see an example of ng class. So let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a different row color, so different background color and font color for even rows, and different background color for the odd rows. So let's go ahead and see. The first thing which I'm going to write is I'm going to write two classes. So I'm saying even, and let's use background color as steel blue, which is one of my favorite because all blue colors are my favorite. And color is white, and odd. So let's say background color is something which one we should use. So let's see, blue violet, right? So color, I'll keep it white, not columns. Great. So we got two classes, and let's see how we can actually apply these classes here. So I can say ng class is equals to, so if it's even, so I'm going to say if it's even, then the class applied should be even. If else, it should be odd. Right? Let's save this and go back. You can see, right? So your even rows has steel blue and white, and odd rows has this another uh, violet blue color, blue violet, and then white as text color. So this is how you can actually use your even and odd values. And this is also how you can use ng class. So ng class, you can directly pass a variable as well in case you have a variable name and you want to use that variable name. But otherwise, you can also pass a string value. So for the example which we have done, right? So we have I mean, based on condition, we are applying different classes. What else? What else does it contain? It also contains the index value. So I can also do let I is equals to index. Something wrong? Yeah, this is wrong. Right, so you have let I equals to index, and is equals to index. What is wrong here? So let even, let odd. Okay, let me just undo. Probably I missed some codes or something like this. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Let strange. Okay, so I can also get the index value. So by using index property, so which is available here. So let's go ahead and use this index. Of course, it starts from 0. So you can use, and now you will have index values 0, 1, 2. I'm sure I missed something. I mean, something I made some syntactical error. Probably this course, right? So I just tried to write after this quote. So it should be inside this quote, whatever I'm writing. Okay, so I is of course starts from 0, so you have 0, 1, 2, and you can also use that. For example, if you have don't have any unique key and you want to just show the running numbers, you can actually use this I. So I plus 1, then you can you can see it has 1 plus 2, 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's up to you, but this properties are this index property is really useful in case of uh, forms. So in case you want to create a dynamic form with form array, this is really useful. I use it a lot. So now let so this index even or not. So now let's go ahead and see another important thing while talking about ng for. And to see this example, I'll have to modify a little bit. So let me just format because so ng-for can also cause an performance issue if it is not used properly. So let me show you one trick which should be used whenever you are using ng-for. It's a property basically. So let's see how we can use that property. For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button, and this button will be load data, which will actually load the entire data which we have available inside product. So I'll say this is load product, and I'll call this as load product. So let's go ahead and do load product. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this dot products is equals to So okay, sorry, it will be an empty for right now. What we were doing is we were directly assigning the value. So products had already some array, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually assign this value when I click on load product. Let's see why. And here inside HTML, I'll say ng if then rather than ng if then, I'll say this is products dot length is greater than 0, right? So if we don't have any products, don't display this table, and if you have more than products available, just go ahead and display this table. This is also how you can actually use ngIf to avoid loading something which for which the data is not available, right? So probably there might be something on your view which may or may not contain the data, and to make sure that nothing is rendered, you just use ngIf with this property. Let's go back to our page. And now we have this ecom product div. Let's click on load product button. And we have this entire data available here. Let's click on toggle load product. So what I'm trying to show you here is when you click on load product data, this you can see there is something which is blinking here on table. This is actually repenting of your entire data which you have inside table. So when the number of times we click on load product, the number of times your T body is repented. Remember, repenting is always costly. So you can actually enable, this is something which I suggest developers to use. So what is that? Show pant flashing rectangles. This is what I generally ask developers to enable whenever they have some performance related issues on the view and they have a lot of DOM elements to show. So you can see when I click on load products, this entire table is actually painted again. So let's see how we can actually avoid this by using one of the properties of ng-for. Here, let's use, so there is a property called track by. So let's use track by, and we can assign it to a function. So I can say track by ID, for example. So right now we do have an unique ID, right? So which is 123. So I can use this function. So let's go ahead and write this particular function here, track by ID, and it receives two parameters. First is index, so I'll keep it as I, the index of your table. So in case you don't have any unique ID, and you cannot have duplicate values, so probably you can use the same index as your unique key. And then you have data, which is product, right? So it is type of product, and here I can just return a unique key. So I'll say data dot id. So I know that this data id is unique, so I'm just returning this. And let's go back to our HTML, and you can see the error is gone. And let's go back to our code again. Sorry, view again. So here, let's open the com product, and let's load product. So first time it was actually repented, but now let's click on load product again and again. So you can see the now actually what is happening is tracked by sorry, your ng4 is actually tracking the values by id. It is saying, okay, these values are actually already available, so I don't have to go ahead and re-render it again, and it will show, it will actually improve your performance. So because it does not have to repaint again everything on your view. So this is how you can utilize the track by value. And let's take one more example before we move ahead. And I'll what I will do is I will add one more product into this existing array. So I'll say add product. So let's see, add product is equals to, and what I can do is this dot products dot push, and let's copy this value. ID is 4, name is probably, which other mobile phones are there? Xiaomi, right? So Xiaomi, and I'll say this is 1st Feb 2020, and let's assign it a price. So now we have add product. So it means we are adding a new product into the same array. Let's click on load product now. Nothing is happening, but we have enabled this repent. So click on add product, and you can see not the entire table, just only one record was added, because by using ng4 and the id, it knows that, okay, I already have 3 products, so I don't have to actually go ahead and update the existing 3 records. I have to just add one. So this is something which you can achieve using track by. Very important in case you are trying to improve the performance of your application, especially what is rendered, right? So use track by wherever possible. I think I'll suggest use in every case in case you are using ng4. So I think this is it for ng4. We don't have anything else to talk about in ng4. We already spoke about ng class, ng switch. So let's see ng switch, or let's talk about ng style as of now. So ng style is again, you can actually dynamically assign some classes by using ng style. So so same as ng class, right? So but rather than actually providing some classes, you can provide styles, inline styles. So I'll not take any example of this, but let's talk about ng switch. So let's go back to ng switch. Let's go back to app component.ts. We still have 5 minutes, so probably I'll be able to complete it. So here, ng switch is very useful, and it is again one of the structural directives. So let's say you have some scenario where you have an login page, and based on the different roles, I mean, you want to display some different component to your user who is logged in, right? This is one example where you can actually use ng-switch, but as I said, I have never used ng-switch in my production application so far. Probably I never needed it, and probably ngif is more than enough for me. But let's see an example of ng-switch. So what I will do is I will create a property. I will call it as role is equals to. I'll say, okay, by default this role is admin, and as I said, based on different um, roles, I want to display something else. So first I can have a div, and I can say ng switch. Okay, so this is that template which is added. So let's use the same template, I think. Okay. So we have ng switch where I can provide my condition. So I can say, okay, and I can assign role here. And now ng switch case, I can assign the values based on which I want to show this. So for example, let's say if it's admin, right? So I'm saying if his role is admin, this is variable, right? So I can just make it a string by using this. Sorry. Okay, so I can provide single quotes and that it will compare it with a string. And then I'm saying if it's an admin, just go ahead and display the product information. If it's an user, so I'm going to say this is another role. So let's say this role is actually a user. So I'm going to just display some information. For example, I'm going to say H1, welcome to ecom application. And default, it also contains default. So I can say you don't have access to the application, right? So you don't have any access to application. Done. So now let's go back and see our view. So we should get product information because my current role is admin. Let's switch back to user. And now we will not see this product information, rather we will see welcome to ecom application. And let's pass an empty role or the role which is not handled. So you can see you don't have access to the application. So this is what you can achieve using ng switch. You can actually display different components, different messages based on the roles which we have. And this is it. This is yeah, so we discussed about ng switch as well. As I said, ng style, you can use it for providing inline style, but a good thing about Ivy is you don't have to use ng style because you can do something like this. Let me show you. Style dot whatever you want to do, right? So let's say style dot, I want to say background color. Okay. Or we should be able to do this. Let's see if it works. Div. So I have to change back to my role to admin. Let's see if it should work, but yeah, it works, right? So you can actually also use this syntax like color dot whatever property you know equals to any values. So this is something which is available with Ivy. You don't have to actually go ahead and use ng style, rather you can just do this. So feel free to choose either ng style or this. It's up to you. So this is it for the day, and we will be back tomorrow to continue with Angular architecture. We'll discuss about Angular architecture. We have also already discussed everything basically, but just to show you a diagram which is available on angular.io, and then we can continue with component lifecycle hooks. So see you tomorrow, and again, I mean, you can just go ahead and star this repository, Angular getting started. Santosh Yadav Dev is my GitHub handle. And this video will be available on YouTube as well. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel as well. I'm not sure why my portfolio is down. Probably I was making some DNS changes. So I have to check with my some Google domain again to see what's wrong here. So, but you can just go to YouTube and search for Tech Talks with Santosh, and you will be able to find my YouTube channel as well. So see you, bye everyone, and see you tomorrow.